With high-end talents like Corbin Carol and Austin Riley struggling, we're firing up the old worry-o-meter with our good buddy Josh Lloyd on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. If you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, we would truly appreciate it if you could do that for us. And if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell below. It subscribes to the channel and gives you notification every time we drop a new episode. I'm your host, Dominic Martino, here as always with my brother, my co-host, my partner in crime, Matthew Ane. And today we have our good buddy Josh Lloyd on the episode. Josh, thank you so much for coming. And if you want to take a minute to let the people know where they could find your work and let them know a little bit about yourself.
Dom and Matt, it is good to be on the show. I host the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast. You can just find that wherever the shows you normally listen to are. Just go search it up and I'm sure you get it. And I'm on the old Twitter at @redrock_bball, but I'm not talking basketball. We're here to do baseball with you guys today. Something that I've just started to, because my son's like insanely into baseball, right? So he's 16, and like last season he started really getting into baseball, and he's like, buy me a bat, and so he started playing at a club. So he's just talking about it all the time, right? He's just always to baseball. What about this? Like, I don't know who you're talking about. I don't know who this guy is. I don't know who this guy is. Because mate, Yamamoto's son. I go, who's that? Like, I don't know. So I've spent the last 3 months like trying to listen to as much as I can, watch as much as I can, get involved in baseball. I'm like 120 games into my MLB The Show franchise at the moment. It's really pushing through that every day, just getting my knowledge up. So I'm here to absorb your information and just throw a fantasy basketball perspective on top of the baseball names, I guess.
Well, that's awesome, Josh. We love it. We're here for you and your son anytime. Feel free to reach out to us. We got you guys covered with any, baseball information. But we're firing up the worry-o-meter. And Matt, why don't you take it away here, brother? Why don't you take the lead for us, my brother?
All right, no doubt. I guess let's start it with probably the most, disappointing name that we probably have here today, and that's Corbin Carol, top 5 pick in most leagues, and has been an utter disappointment. And unfortunately, I think there's some things that are making it kind of real, in my opinion. I'm looking at how he only has 1 home run throughout the season so far, and that's definitely not the case that he had last year. You look at what's going on with his stats in general with like exit velocity. It's down like almost 6 miles per hour, like 5.1. Even his max EV, which is kind of like somewhat decent, not too far off, but still 2 miles slower than last year. And you look at how often he's making hard contact, and he's only doing it 29% of the time, whereas last year he was making about 40% of the time. Corbin Carroll last year, honestly, was just going off. He had 25 home runs, and to just even have that pace over a whole season, he's nowhere even close to that. So either there's 2 things coming here right now. Either it's going to happen where he's going to do a full course correct and we're going to have a monster from here on out the second it starts going, or it's going to be a trend and there's something more true to what's going on with his shoulder, and it's kind of zapping his power. We may not see as productive Corbin Carroll, and he ends up with 10 home runs at most and a bunch of stolen bases. Like, it's 2 sides of the coins. I'm actually pretty worried about it too when it comes to Corbin Carroll, because one, with the shoulder history and the inflammation possibilities, the max EV. So and the average exit velocity. I'm looking at it like, I'm actually probably about a 6. I'm not dropping him. I'm not giving him away either. The draft
You're up
capital
there,
is too
brother.
high. Yeah, I'm up there. I'm definitely worried. You look at it and you're just like, okay, how exactly am I going to handle this? Well, I can't give him away. I'm also not going to be able to go and exchange him for anybody in a first round. I'm not going to go down a round either to try and get out of this for a productive player. I kind of got to ride this out for at least a little bit more time on the chance that he does. Now, we all knew that this was a possibility. He was the most riskiest pick in all of the draft. But, hey, it's Corbin Carroll. Who's to say he couldn't repeat it? Unfortunately, we're seeing something else. And I think there's either an IL stint coming, and we just haven't heard too much about it, or there is a nice course adjustment. We shall see. But again, I'm at a 6.
Damn, Matt. It's not very often that we disagree, but I think I'm going the other way on this one. And then I think Josh, you might have to be a tiebreaker on this one for us, brother. So with Corbin Carol, I hear everything you're saying. Definitely the shoulder. The injury last year was super scary. They literally, it looked like he was done for. We were counting him out for the rest of the year. He came back a couple of days later. He actually looked fine. So early in the season, we see this a lot. We see this a lot, especially with young players. We've seen it, with Julio this year, Julio last year, Bobby Witt. Sometimes with these young guys, it takes them a little bit to adjust early on in the season. And I think Corbin Carroll's just following that suit. The underlying stuff looks good. He's still walking a lot, 16 walks to 26 strikeouts. I love to see that. Still 8 steals. The sprint speed is still the highest in the league. Corbin Carroll is very fast. Matt, you are right. He's not hitting the ball as hard, but I think as the weather warms up, we're going to just, see that. We see it every year with that. I'd be at like a 3, maybe 2.5 on Corbin Carroll. I'm not very worried about him. And, if you find anybody that is really super worried, like Matt, no offense, brother, but I'm buying if, we're getting, Corbin Carroll for 75 cents on the dollar. But Josh, you want to hop in and let us know what you think about Corbin Carroll?
First of all, you guys started this off and you called it the warrior meter, and I was like, that doesn't sound right. I feel like it should be the worryometer. But anyway, that's beside the point. That's my contribution to this. We'll call it the worryometer. But yes, Corbin Carroll, right? All right. So here's my thoughts on this. This is not an established player that's been doing this for 10 years, right? But we also have seen a significant chunk of what he was doing last season that was really good. And it feels very unlikely to me that somebody would drop as much as he's dropped, like OPS from 870 to 540. Like that's not real. Like, the reality is probably somewhere in the middle, but it's not that far down. Like you said, all that exit velocity stuff is down, and I think you can track it back to the injury. So that otherwise I'd have a worry of 0, right? I'd be like, this is going to be fine. Like, it's going to bounce back. We are less than a quarter of a way through the season. It will be better. But you feel that maybe some of the power and the contact being down is because like a change in mechanics because of the injury. But there's almost no way you can look at what he's done this season and see a drop-off of that magnitude and go, oh, yeah, the guy that was the rookie of the year is just all of a sudden trash now and forgot how to play baseball. That just seems extraordinarily unlikely. I would think that the injury is more of the concern, and maybe that does require some time off to get it right. But overall, you are, I think you mentioned it earlier, you're going to see some sort of a surge that probably puts him way above expectations to course correct this.
Wow, dropping the mic there. First shot at fantasy baseball take. I love it. You make me feel like I can move mine down just a smidge, but also I'm still going to rock out as a nervous guy. Did you give a rank of where you're going to be in terms of your worryometer?
Oh, okay. So completely arbitrary. Worryometer. It's
you got to get back on the worryometer.
I'm a completely arbitrary scale that I've never used before. I'm going to say that I would be at about, I'm not going to do decimals. I'm going to say I'm about a 4. So I'm not quite at 5. I'm down a little bit, but it's production wise fine. Injury is what's causing it, and that's where I have like, what if it is something that they go, oh yeah, we've actually went in and said there's a tear in your labrum and you're out 3 months, and you go, okay, well that's where my worry comes from.
Very nice.
And I'm right there with you on that, Josh. I don't think former high-end pick like Corbin Carol just lost it. But let's keep things pushing here. Let's, rock through to this next guy. Let's talk about Austin Riley a little bit here from that Atlanta Braves team. Now, Austin Riley, he's not looking so good, slow start to the season. But, he's another guy I just feel like is notoriously slow starter. We've seen it from him before. So far, Austin Riley, 18 runs, 3 homers, 18 RBIs, 237 batting average. And I say this a lot, but this is the time of year where you make the trades for guys like this. This is a guy who's well established. We know what he can do. He's on one of the best teams in baseball. Former high-end prospect. The last 3 years, 303 batting average, 273 batting average, 281 batting average, 30 plus home runs every year, almost 100 RBIs every year. The guy's 27 years old, in the prime of his career. I'm at a 1 on Austin Riley.
I mean, I hear you with Riley. I mean, obviously he's been doing it for a lot longer than a guy like Corbin Carroll, but I'm kind of like this with Riley. I'm just taking a conservative approach. I'm going to hold him. Obviously, he's not too far off from what he did last year's April/March. Yeah. So like he's on pace, maybe a little bit lower batting average, but the OPS is somewhat fine. I'm not going to be mad at it. He's kind of just a hold. Do not trade. Do not, I guess what I like to call his hedge and just like full send. He's about a 2 for me for now, and I'll just see how it plays out for the time being.
I'll sit here and I'll tell you, I don't know if he's a slow starter. I don't know if this is his history, but let me ask you guys this question first. In the basketball world, in the NBA, it is generally established. Well, not generally established. I tell people that it's established because I think it is. That there is the age of 29 is sort of where the majority of players, if you look at their value graph, it sits. That's the top, right? Whether they stay at that top for 4 more years, whether they fall off immediately, but you go up to about 29, it could extend 27 to 30, whatever, and then they start to fall down. Is there an accepted this is your peak age in baseball? Is it around that mark where
it's right?
29?
I would say it's right around there, especially for hitters. You see that peak more around, I would say, from like 26 to like that 29 range that you're speaking of. And then for majority, obviously there are the exceptions, they are the LeBrons and the guys like that, to use a basketball player there. But around like that 29 age, you definitely start to see that fall off as well, for sure.
The interesting thing you bring up with LeBron is because even when you go look at LeBron's stuff, is it 29 is his peak? He just was able to keep it from 100% down to like 98% for the next 10 years, right? But that is like the best that you get, and then it just falls off slowly. But I say that to say that Austin Riley's done this for these last couple of years. He's 27, right? It seems very unlikely that, again, all of a sudden that he's just not able to do it when you're 145 plate appearances into the season. His contact stuff all looks pretty good to me from what I'm seeing here. His recent ex-Woba stuff is really high, so he's just getting some unlucky breaks at the moment. And I'm going to put it 0. I'm not worried at all. This is a high-end player, high-end prospect who's got great results in the past. I know you guys would probably say this all the time as well. It's like if you had a slump like this through July, August, you go,
you won't be worried at all.
It's annoying, but whatever. He'll be fine. He was great for 2 months, and it's annoying that it's happening now, right? But you wouldn't be like, well, the only results I've got are these bad results, so look how bad it must be. And that is a hard mental hurdle to break through, no matter what fantasy sport you're playing, because if you only see those results, that's all you see. But if they get chucked on to another 300 plate appearances that are awesome, then it just sort of fades into the background. You don't notice it, and that is something hard to pass. Maybe I'll push it 1. Let's put it at 0, though. I'm not really worried at all. I'm pretty sure it's all going to come back.
All right.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you, Josh, as I said, and Matt as well. But before we move on to the rest of the guys on the worryometer, we do have a quick ad break for you guys. And guys, we're talking eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is what also keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. And guys, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch over to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for your everyday to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you that can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And then, guys, this is the one that's the most important to Matt and I. We're once again introducing that Diamond Club on the Subtext platform, your ultimate fantasy baseball companion. As this season unfolds, you can rely on us for dynamic content, get real-time alerts right to your phone, including waiver wire rankings, instant call-up notifications. And, guys, this is the time of year you need that with, the big prospects coming up. I guarantee there's going to be a lot of them, and we'll get those alerts right out to you. We got injury reactions and just a whole lot more than we can offer in this 30-minute podcast. Stay ahead of your fantasy league by joining the Diamond Club on Subtext, where the path to your victories begin. Subscribe now and elevate your fantasy baseball to a new level. Whew. And as always, brother Matt, I'm throwing it right back to you, man. It's a lot for me.
I hear you, man. That was a lot. I mean, thank God there's not a double tap there. But what's
of course.
Let's keep it moving. Let's talk Paul Goldschmidt. Good old Goldie. We kind of said that, he's gonna be a bust right off the jump, right before the season started, and it's kind of coming to fruition. He had to go to Driveline and, work on his bat speed because he did see a decrease going into last year. And it's kind of, showing up here. He's not hitting the ball as great. Exit velocity's down, both on max EV and just average exit velocity. You even look at we could talk ex-Woba down quite a bit, and even his hard hit percentage is down about 6%. I'm not liking it. And he's striking out a hell of a lot more, 29% of the time, instead of walking down 2% of the time. He looks like a shell of himself out there, honestly. And I think the production is just not there for him. And ultimately, I just think that we're going to have a rough time with him for the rest of the year. So if you were unfortunate enough to draft him, I think there's just going to be more time to do it. So if anything, he'd probably be a guy I'd be trying to get rid of and see if I can get 75 cents on the dollar, because unfortunately, I'm at a 10. And I'm outright. You can't drop him because you spent the draft capital on him, but you're going to have to sell him and see if you can make something out of nothing.
Yeah, Matt, this is an easy one for me, 10 as well. We told you guys not to do it before the season. Hopefully you listened. Matt, you hit all the key points. The only other thing I'm going to add is he's 36 years old, and we were literally just talking about age. Even the best players, Father Time's undefeated. He's undefeated, and, at 36 years old for Paul Goldschmidt, it's, I think it's his time, and I'm out. I got 10 on the worryometer. Josh, how about you, man?
I'm not going to go that extreme, but I'm there. Like, he's old, right? Let this happen. So he's probably not going to be a guy that's hitting 203 the rest of the season. That's a pretty low number, yeah. But even you look at what happened from 2022 to 2023, where all the numbers, everything's declining, and that happens. That's what will happen. And he might not sit like, what is he, 268 last season, 363 OBB. Like, if he sits at 230, if he sits at like 310. Like, that seems okay. Like, that seems reasonable given where is at in his career. But for us playing fantasy, that's not reasonable. That's terrible. And when you're that age, like, it's very unlikely that all of a sudden he's going to go, oh, well, here we are, the back to mid-prime Paul Goldschmidt. Like, that's just not going to be the case. Like, a player this old that's showing that significant decline consistently over time, like, you just move on.
Yeah. All right. You know what? It's been Dom and I leading off. Josh, why don't you take this next one? You want to talk about Alex Bregman?
Alex Bregman. All right. So this is a guy that, again, we're talking about players, and this is someone that even before I was really getting involved and looking at baseball, that I knew the name, right? So he's got that name recognition. He's been around. He's been doing it. He's 30 years of age, but everything at the moment looks pretty rough. There's nothing that's particularly looking exciting. None of his indicator numbers are particularly high at the moment. No power, like, he's just not doing anything. I'm not really certain where I fit with this one. He's in that age range of 30 where you go, okay, it should bounce back. So I'm going to say that I am a little bit worried because we're just getting nothing and there's no real significant positive indicators. Like, it's nice. K rate is really low as well, but the fact that his K rate is so low, yet he's still not doing anything else, is like, that's a little concerning, because you've got these really positive things and it's still not making everything else look good. And that's where you go, well, what if that comes back to the pack and the other stuff doesn't improve? Then it could get worse. That seems unlikely, but yeah, I would say that I'm in the middle with him. I'm probably sitting at about a 5, but he does have that track record. He's done it for a long time. And I feel we're going to get some, yes, maybe not the level of course correction we'd get with a Corbin Carol, but I do think that this has been a relatively consistent run from Bregman, and I don't think it's going to fall off a cliff to this degree, although, there are some worrying signs there.
Yeah. No, I mean, everything you said, it makes complete sense. And honestly, too, you look at what Alex Bregman did last year in March and April, and he's just a slow start. He batted .219 last year. Between March and April, he only had 3 home runs, had 12 ribs. Like, still does his thing where he walks just as much, if not more, than he strikes out. So, like, I think it's just more of a trend for Alex Bregman overall. I don't think I'm worried at all with him. Like you said, it's the age and whatnot, but ultimately too, he's kind of like unreliable when it comes to just who he is. He's just a solid third baseman that, you get him, it's like a without fail kind of player. So, he's one of those guys you're solidified and you just know who he is. And I think he'll be fine coming through this next month. Should be picking up soon.
Matt, did you throw out a number for the worryometer?
A 0.
Okay. I'm there with you. I'm there with you on Bregman. I'll take it even a step further. You talked about last year for Alex Bregman. I'm talking about Alex Bregman's career. Alex Bregman's career: 505 games in the first half, 260 batting average. 81 homers. Right. Second half, 419 games. So that's almost 100 less games. 78 homers. So only 3 less homers in 100 less games, and a 294 batting average. This is what he does, as Josh and yourself said, he's been doing this a long time, a multi-time all-star with Alex Bregman. Hopefully the Astros turn it around, as a team. So those counting stats, can get to where they normally are with, Alex Bregman. But 20 plus homers, close to 100 RBIs, a 260 plus batting average is what I'm expecting from Alex Bregman. So I'm going to go a 1 on the worryometer. But before we move on, and we're going to throw a couple of pitchers your way on the worryometer, we do have one more quick ad for you guys.
PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They are the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks. You pick more or less than 2 to 6 player snap projections and watch the winnings roll in. Exploring my skills on PrizePicks this season adds an extra layer of excitement to daily fantasy sports. With just a few taps, you can transform $10 into $1,000 easily. PrizePicks is incredibly user-friendly. You can make your selections and submit your entries in less than 60 seconds. And as the host of Locked On Fantasy Baseball, I should be giving you some picks, right? So Ryan Mountcastle in his next start, you should put higher than 0.5 total bases in his next start. Opt for Shohei Ohtani to have higher than 0.5 home runs at his next outing. If he did that this weekend, he came through for you. Opt for CJ Abrams to have higher than 0.5 stolen bases in his next game, which that dude steals bases like a career criminal. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with PrizePicks. All right. We are back, and like Dom promised, we have some pitching. And Dom, why don't you take it away here?
Yeah, let's talk about, former New York Yankee Michael King. And I love the fact that we got Juan Soto, but I was a little bit sad to see Michael King go. But he's off to a tough start. 7 starts so far for Michael King this year, 4.29 ERA, 42 innings, 43 strikeouts, and a 1.40 whip. Now, as I dive deeper into Michael King, I'm like, okay, what's really going wrong for him this year? His sinker is getting absolutely demolished with a 3.03 batting average against it, and he's throwing it 22% of the time. So that really stands out to me where, last year it really was getting hit as bad as it is now. So I think if Michael King could, course correct on that, because the rest of his pitches look like, they're doing pretty well. The underlying stuff doesn't look great, overall. So I am a little bit more worried, besides Goldschmidt, I am a little bit more worried about Michael King than almost anybody else today, but I do see the path for him to get back on track because nothing else really stands out to me, crazy besides, he's getting a little bit hit harder on that sinker. I'm about at 5/6 for Michael King. He has the stuff to really, course correct here. So I can see the window, but I am worried after 7 starts.
Yeah. And I mean, being that last year was pretty much his breakout year and he comes out and then goes to a new team, I think he's also falling a victim of new year, new team kind of type deal where, he's kind of still a human being at the end of the day and has to literally pick up his life in New York and move across the country. And, that does play a factor on it. I think there's probably some second half kind of value with him, probably closer towards the end around playoff time. But right now, you're pretty much going to be in a struggle bus. I am around about a 6 or a 7 with him. And it's kind of just the approach is you probably could drop him, but I'd probably try and trade him and give him away first. Just see if I can get anything.
I wouldn't drop him right now. I'd hold. See if you could trade him.
Yeah. I would trade first if I can. If not, and you need the spot and you're able to go and get a better stream and you're down and the cards are hold'em. You need the spot. I'm not opposed to doing it because I guarantee he'll be dropped the next week anyway. So Michael King, you just do what you feel is necessary and don't feel like you have to really hold on to the guy too tight.
All right, here's my thing. I watch more Padres probably than any other team. And I've got a couple of questions to throw to you guys. Yeah, my son's a Padres fan, so that's the attention I've got to be paying here to know what's going on with this team. But what is the history like through Major League Baseball of converted starters, like relievers converted to starters? And because that's obviously what King is doing. This is his first season as a full-time starter. Is there shakiness with that? Is that like one of those things where you go, oh, not sure, there's an element of risk in that? Is that part of what King is falling prey to here? Because obviously, like, he started some games last season, but like he's almost at the same number this season that he did last season. Is that a common concern that people have?
It's interesting because from what I've noticed, you see mixed reviews. You see a guy like Jeffrey Springs that was a former, reliever, and he was super successful, as a starter. And then you've seen guys like, it goes both ways. Ian Kennedy went from starter to reliever back to starter again. And when he made the transition from starter to reliever very well, but then when he tried to come back and start again, it wasn't as successful. So I've seen it go both ways where it, works for some guys, might not work for others. Michael King is a guy who's always had the stuff. He was always envisioned as a starter, but it never wasn't really panning out. And then, the Yankees needed somebody to step up last year, and Michael King happened to be that guy and has looked very good in that short stint, as you mentioned. So that is a great point there as well, Josh, that you bring up there. That is another reason I am a little bit more worried about King than, let's say somebody who is, just a traditional starter as well. But that is a great point there, Josh.
Let me throw two other things here on King. Is you talk about like dropping or trading him away. Say, look at the numbers and I go, how can it be worse? Right. That's what I'll throw. Like what could happen here that would make it worse? We go back to Goldschmidt and you go, well, he's old. Like he could just get hurt and maybe this is just who he is. That could be worse very easily. Like how does what King is doing, a 4.9 ERA, how does it get worse? 1.4 whip. Like the odds would suggest it's got to get better to some degree, right? So there's that part of it. And also you look at the Padres, like, is there any risk of anybody taking his spot in the rotation? I don't think so. Like, they're going to like bring old mate Randy Vasquez in. Are they going to bring any of their young prospects? I know the Padres prospects. Like, you're not bringing.
Yeah, I was going to say they don't really have anybody cooking down there that could.
These guys are all young, like Snelling and Lesko. Yeah. They're all like 21 or 22. Like these guys aren't coming up. Like Johnny Brito's not taking that spot. Like these guys aren't coming up into this position. So you'd think he's relatively secure in that rotation, unless they could make a trade at any point, but. There's nothing that's really like pressing to get take him out of that spot. There's no one like you're breathing down his neck that's going to get promoted in the next week or two that might take him out of that spot. So I put all those things. You got to be worried. The conversion, the changing teams is a huge factor in basketball as well. You can always knock off the 5%, 10% production, especially initially. But how does it get worse from here? And is there any risk of losing the job? And I think no, it probably can't get much worse. And no, he probably doesn't lose his job. So I wouldn't be like, well, just take him, just get rid of him, because a starter in a pitcher-friendly park is usually, I'm going to guess, pretty valuable.
You're right in those regards. Like, yeah, he won't lose his spot, but the thing is too, like, I'm a big factor of just not being stuck to the name at this point. Like, if I need to win a week, I'm not gonna have like a roster anchor essentially. And like, it's obviously he has a little bit more value, but we didn't pay a high draft price for him. So if he's not performing, I'm totally okay with just moving on. But obviously, because he has the name, it's a little bit easier to say, hey, why don't you take this upside on Michael King and let me kind of, throw you I guess a bag of doo-doo, because I can't say the other word, and be like, yeah, like, here you go. And like, maybe I can get the trade done. Like, here, take some upside and kind of get another deal done and get a player on my team, essentially.
Yeah, and that's totally reasonable too. Like when you're talking back end of your roster, like who cares? That's what it ends up with, because you might find 20 blokes that appear over the next 4 or 5 weeks who'll be useful for 1 day, 2 days, a two-start week, or a prospect coming up. Like there's so many different options. So that is all going to depend on your roster construction as to where it sits. Like if he's anyone who you can make an easy argument is your worst player, then who cares? Get rid of him. They mean nothing, right? If that is your worst player, then you don't hold on under any circumstance, right? Or no, it's not true. You can, but you shouldn't feel you need to in any circumstance. So, look, that's all going to depend on the strength of your team. But if he comes in as your second best, third best starting pitcher because you went hitting heavy in the draft, and you go, well, maybe I just need to be a little bit cautious about what I'm doing here.
Yeah, I want to chime back in, and honestly, I love the way this conversation is going, because I almost bridge the gap here where I play a lot of fantasy basketball and baseball. In basketball, Josh, and I know you can attest to this, it's a shorter season. It's only 82 games. So if you have somebody, like you're saying, at the end of your bench, even one of your worst 3 guys, okay, yeah, absolutely, you can move those guys easy. In baseball, I feel like it's a little different, especially a guy with like a Michael King, who we know is very talented, has the pitches, has the stuff. And is 86% owned on Yahoo. You probably drafted him as like your 4 or 5. He was moving up draft boards very quickly, coming into the season. I know Matt begs to differ a little bit, but Michael King is just not a guy I'm ready to move on from. In baseball, it's a longer season. We have a lot of time. It's 7 starts. I am a little bit more worried. I am about a 6 on Michael King. So, you definitely could, take that information and do what you may. And Josh, I love how you said, if you're playing a short shallow league, he's one of your worst guys, short, move on. But Michael King is not a guy I'm ready to move on from. We are running very short on time here. Josh, thank you so much for coming. Matt, I don't know if you want to add anything else. You just want to head out.
No, just thank you, man. So let's call it a day.
Guys, thank you for watching. Shout out to our everydayers and new listeners making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. Once again, shout out to our everydayers and new listeners. Josh, thank you again. We appreciate it so much, brother, for giving us your time today, to us and the fans. But guys, until next time, see ya.
Peace.
See you guys.